Trish. I'm the designer at Sew Chic Pattern Company, and today I'm going to teach you how to install a centered zipper using industrial methods. Today I'll be using the yoke from these two patterns, so if you want to follow along, you can find the directions on how to do that inside of the instruction manual that comes with the pattern. Today, the first thing that you'll need to know is there are two kinds of zippers that we use. And the first kind is the invisible zipper, which is listed down here at the bottom, and the all-purpose zipper. They both do the same purpose, but they're installed in different ways. The way to tell the difference between the two is in the way they look. So over here, this is an all-purpose zipper. It has a different tab than the invisible zipper does. And on the invisible zipper, the teeth are on the back, while on the all-purpose zipper, the teeth are on the front. To use this method, you'll have to have an all-purpose zipper. An invisible zipper will not work for this particular installation method. So that's the difference. Today I'm going to use an all-purpose zipper that I have cut off. I've shortened it for the purpose of putting it into my yoke. In this case, you'll want to cut it off and then do a zigzag at the bottom of your zipper the length that you want it to be, and then your zipper is ready to put in. So I have my yokes cut out here. This one is going to be my front and back yoke, and this one is going to be my facing. It's already been interfaced, and I'm going to put this on the inside, but I could, if I wanted to, put the interfacing on this piece if I wanted it to be more stiff. So now we're ready to start with our zipper installation. And the first step is to put right sides together, our center back seam, so that we can stitch it with our basting stitch. First thing I have to do is put my machine on basting stitch. 6.0 is the longest stitch my machine will do. So the first thing I want to make sure is that my thread is to the end. I'm going to put my needle down and start sewing at 5/8 of an inch. You can see that my tape is my guide, because on Viking sewing machines they don't give you an accurate 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now I need to clip my stitches, this basting stitch, so that it makes it easier to pull these stitches out after this zipper is installed. And I'll go all the way down the end, all these stitches. So the next step is to press this seam open. We want to be able to see that seam because we're going to need that fold line later. Okay, so now we're ready to put the zipper in, and I need to measure 5/8 of an inch down. So I'm going to put a pin in here at 5/8 of an inch. I could use a pencil if I wanted to. So this pin is going to be important because it tells me where to put my pull. It needs to be right below there because this is my seam line, and I'm going to be sewing right along that top. So this is my mark, and now I can pull this pin out. So now I need to get that tape out of the way, or get the side of my yoke out of the way, so that I can now pin my zipper just to the seam allowance, just like that. And now I'm ready to sew that on. So now I need to change my foot to a zipper foot. And I'm going to move the needle over to the left so that it's closer to this edge over here. So the thing to remember is that it doesn't really matter where you stitch on this portion. I can stitch close to the zipper, I can stitch away from the zipper. It doesn't really matter. So now I'm going to turn the zipper around, or turn the whole piece around, and I'm going to sew the other side exactly the same way that I did the first side, but this time I'm going to sew from the rear up to the end. So the important thing at the end here is to hold your tape in place so that your pull doesn't get in the way. So now that my zipper is attached to my seam allowance only, I need to add my facing. The important thing to remember about doing a zipper like this is that you must remove 5/8 of an inch from the back seam, or the center back of your facing. And I have drawn a line with pencil so that my 5/8 will be accurate. But if you don't do this, then your facing will be too long and it won't match up with your yoke once everything's all together. So now I have, this is the right side of my fabric and then my wrong side of the fabric. I'm going to put my right side of the fabric to my yoke, and I'm going to pin it in place. I'm sandwiching my zipper in between and putting my seam allowances together like so. And now I'm ready to sew. So what I'm trying to do now, I'm trying to sew over the top of my previous stitching. So here I am, I'm ready. It's attached on this side, and there it is on the finished side. I'm going to bring my facing around and now attach it to this side so that I can do the very same thing on my right hand side, and sewing it. There's the front side. So that's the front, or the side that we'll be showing the public, and this is the back side. So you can see that my zipper is now attached to both pieces, the yoke front and the facing. And if I turn this right side to right side, there's what our yoke is going to look like. I need to be able to turn this right side to right side so that I can sew this top seam. And so I took out a little bit of the stitching. I'm going to unzip as far as I can get this down, because that's going to help me turn this right side to right side. So here's my front. I want to turn it with my zipper right in the fold. And I'm going to pin this to keep it in place. And you can see that I've got a little bit of fabric right there. It's going to kind of pool in the middle. And this side needs to be turned also. And there's my zipper. I'm folding my fabric right so that my fold of my center back is right in the middle. and all the seam that I just did to attach my zipper to both pieces is pointing outward. And I'm going to pin this all the way around and sew it now all the way around the waistline. So as I move around my waistline, you can see that my seams match up, and they would not have matched up if I hadn't have cut off my facing. So I'm going to continue to pin all the way around. My seams again matching up exactly. Everything's pinned, and now I'm ready to sew. Now I'm going to change my foot back to my regular foot, and I have to move my needle back to the center where it was to begin with. So I have to feel where the top of my metal is. The stop is right there, and I have to put a pin right above there so that I can get really close, but I don't run over the top of it. And that helps me know where to start. So I put my needle down, pull out my pin in that place, and I'm ready to go. So I'm coming up on the end, and I'm going to use my pin as a guide to my ending point. Okay, so now I'm going to check my stitches to make sure that I don't have any boo-boos or funny stuff, something's caught. Now I can trim, and it looks good on the inside. Let's check the outside. I'm going to turn these two edges. I want to make sure that, yes, my zipper ends at the same point, and it's perfect. So now what I want to do is I need to do some understitching. Now understitching means that my seam allowance and my facing are on the same side of each other, and I'm actually going to stitch on the right side of my fabric because I always want to see what I'm looking at while I'm sewing. I don't want to sew blindly on this side and then turn it over and find out that it looks bad. So I'm going to start stitching here. We can't get all the way into the corner, obviously, so we start at a point that's outside a little ways. I make sure that my seam allowance is going the same way as my facing, and I'm going to put it under my machine and start sewing. So normally I would suggest that you press your seam allowance towards the facing because it's a lot easier to sew when it's already been pressed. But in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and stitch this. If you're doing this on a curve, you also want to do some clipping, like around a neck, facing, or any seam that's going to be curved will be hard to turn, and it won't lay flat unless you clip all the seam allowance. So here I am at the end. Here's my corner, and I'll just back up my stitching. This is what my understitching looks like. You can see how the fabric rolls to the wrong side so that my seam doesn't show on the right side of the fabric. So now I need to press. If I didn't press before, I have to press now. It's time to change out my foot. I don't have to change it, but I like to because a walking foot is very helpful in keeping the fabric from getting all rippled up underneath. I'm going to start from the bottom. And the only thing that we care about is that we have an even distance from the needle to our center back seam all the way. You can set this point, you can set that top stitching at any point that you feel comfortable. I'm going to use this little hole right here as my guide, and my seam is going to be right in the middle. Now I'm going to put my needle down, lift my foot, and unzip again so that my zipper doesn't get in the way. With my zipper pull out of the way, I can finish my stitching all the way to the end. So now I need to put my stitching on the other side, the same distance as the first. Lift, move your zipper pull out of the way, put your foot down again, and finish your stitching. So you can see that my thread has almost completely removed itself while I was working. I'm going to finish it off with the seam ripper. And now I have a perfectly formed zipper, front and back, with a beautiful facing. Now you're ready to install your own professional centered zipper. I hope you'll visit me on the internet at www.sewchicpatterns.com.